morning, everyone. This is Sarah with Harrisburg Project. I'm a little bit early logging in, so I'm going to give it a few minutes until we go ahead and get started. While we're waiting, I did add a training for this afternoon for interpreter data. I added it a week or so ago, so you may not have seen that in the news briefing. We're just going to do a Zoom. It's going to be casual. I'll take your questions. Just had a lot of requests for that, and I just felt like it might be better just to do something a little more informal. I have a recorded training out there with the steps and all that, so we're going to do that this afternoon. So I can't remember if I put it on for 1 or 1:30 right now, but if you look on our website under trainings, you can go ahead and register for that, and then the Zoom will send you a reminder so you don't forget. I will record the training. I finally remembered to go in and set my Zooms to record automatically, so I don't have to remember. So it's 9 o'clock, but I'm still going to wait a few minutes. We had a lot registered for this session, and we're not quite at half yet. So I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes. This is not a long training, so if you were with me last week, we will not be here for 2 hours again. Hopefully, we won't be together for 2 hours again all year until next year for the all claims. Fund code E takes a while, but hopefully not as long. So I'll give it a minute or so here and let it climb. Okay, the interpreter training, it's going to be under trainings on our homepage. So you click on trainings up at the top from our homepage or in the news briefing, either one. I'm going to be adding a couple more trainings probably today, some little informal Zoom stuff. So just keep watching that news briefing for those to change. I'm going to add whatever you ask for. So you'll just have to keep watching it. Hopefully we won't have any more. I think after the all claims is when I had, some pretty good feedback on what maybe we're lacking. So I'm going to add something on speech only. And then if you do billings, I'm going to add something for billings. But again, we'll just do little Zooms where you guys can talk to me and tell me your needs more than anything. Okay. All right. We have kind of stalled here on our entries, so we'll go ahead and get started. For those of you just logging in, my name is Sarah. I work for Harrisburg Project. I'm the lead trainer here. We are going to talk about what you do for the end of the school year in iStar, the things that you can be doing if you have time to do them now. I know this is a busy time of year, so some of these things don't absolutely have to be done at the end of the year. It just makes your next year a little bit easier on you. So we're going to go over some things that you can be doing. If you have questions during the session, you can ask them in the questions pod. So when you see me glancing over here, I'm looking at my screen to see if you have anything to ask me. In addition, under your materials, I did upload today's training. Those notes are also on our website, again, under the trainings on our homepage. So if you click on our homepage and go to trainings up at the top, you'll see the listing of trainings. You can register for anything you want there. And what I had mentioned at the beginning of the session while we were waiting is that I added an interpreter training for today. It's going to be a casual Zoom that is, I believe, at 1:30 today. So you can register for that. That way the Zoom will send you a reminder. So we will go ahead and get started. So what we're going to talk about today is going to be the dates that you need to remember for the end of the year, approvals due dates. We'll talk a little bit about calendars and your unreported tab, your end dates and reasons for exit, how to do end ads at the end of the year, age-related errors that you could encounter, your warnings versus your errors, how to get your error reports, and then how to get support from us if you need it, how to navigate our website a little bit. And I've got some things to say about our website as well. So, all right, starting off, dates to remember. So what's coming up this summer? Right now, we have just passed our final approval due date for the regular term as far as due dates in the regular school year. Now we're going to move to due dates that are in the summer. The first one is going to be June 15th, regular term orphanage approvals and claims. These are going to be your fund codes D, E, and F. After June 15th, you will not be able to add any more fund code D, E, or F records for the regular term. June 30th is when that interpreter data is due. July 15th, if you're filing excess cost, I hope nobody has to do this anymore, but if you are filing excess cost, you cannot add any more Fund X records after July 15th. And then your indicator 11 and 13 are also due on July 15th. We're going to start sending reminders out to you on the students that don't meet or that have reasons over 60 days that are not in compliance. So we're going to make sure that those are correct and remind you about those. July 31st, not only are the personnel approvals due that day, but we also have a slew of correction periods that will be ending. So correction period for D, E, and F claims, correction period for excess cost claims. August 3rd, I believe, will be our automatic rollover in iStar. Typically, they do it on the first Monday in August. This year, the statutory due date for private facility and separate school falls on a Saturday, so we will have this due on August 14th. That means that after August 14th, you cannot add any B or S fund records. We have a nice correction period on those where you can work on them still, but you cannot add any B or S tuition records after August 14th. Okay? So those are your dates to remember. And that's what we're looking at this summer. I went through it quickly, but it's a whole lot of work if you have to do some of those things. So final approvals by fund. So we said June 15th, fund codes D, E, and F will be locked for additions. So again, you cannot add any fund D, E, or F regular term records after June 15th. Again, you cannot add any Fund X records after July 15th, and then you will not be able to add any A, H, K, L, or P records after July 31st. So after July 31st, the only records that you can add in iStar Plus are going to be Fund B or Fund S, as in Sam. All right, if I missed an E-Fund code student, I can still add their record. So you can add a Fund E record as long as the begin date is after March 2nd, or March 2nd or after. Okay, so May 1st prevented you from adding anything from basically the beginning of the year to March 1st. So if the begin date is March 2nd or after, then you can add a Fund E record, Fund D, E, or F record at this point. Okay. But you only have until June 15th to do that. Fund S, Fund B and S are not due until August 14th this year. So B and S, you cannot add any records after August 14th. Okay, so let's go back a screen here. Down here's your Fund S. Okay. All right. Remember that for your orphanage records, so for Funds D, E, and F, and for your Fund S records, You have to have separate summer records. So if you need to do NDADs on those, you can go ahead and do those as well. You can do an NDAD on the regular term record, end at the last day of school, and then add a summer term record. And remember, you're going to need SIS enrollments for those summer kids, all of them that you're going to be putting in. So remember to keep those as well. Okay. Public calendars. So your district superintendent is responsible for the public calendar. They are due the last day of school. We want to make sure that they are finalizing the calendars. So they do a final amendment if they need to. So if they haven't been keeping up with the emergency days and all of that, they may do a final amendment. But then they need to go back in and make sure that it's marked final, not final amended. It needs to be final calendar. Okay, so the reason we're concerned, it affects your indicator 11 calculations. So if you're close to 60 days on a student and it fell during a snowstorm, you know, and that's the reason that you're over 60, then you really want, you know, that calendar to be correct for that calculation. Also, we use those calendars for our claims and tuition billing in iStar Plus. So we want to make sure that those are accurate. You know, if you guys went every day and there was no alteration, it's not detrimental. But if you do need alterations to that, we're looking again for that calendar to be marked final. Over the summer, we'll send emails if we have to the district superintendents to get them to mark those as final if we're not sure. So even though this is not necessarily a all special ed issue, it does affect us. So we want to keep that in mind. All right. Your unreported students. I will tell you, it's late in the year to be doing this, but we do want to make sure that you do have everybody added, because if you don't have them added this year and you don't get them next year, you're going to continue to miss them. They're not going to be in iStar Plus. So what do you do with this list? You can go look at this list and see, are any of the students in this listing actually receiving special ed services? If they are, then you're going to click on the plus sign under actions and you'll add an approval record for them. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if they were an orphan all year, you're not going to be able to code them as an E at this point for the whole year. You're going to have to put them in as an A for a while. So there are restrictions to this, and that's why I'm saying, even though I want to talk about this and I want you guys to know about this, it is very late in the game to just start looking here. Okay, so you should not be adding in a slew of records. All right. What this means here on this page is that these students have been uploaded in SIS, marked as having IDEA services. It could be a mistake, okay? So it doesn't necessarily mean that you come in here and add all the students on the listing, but you do need to look at it once in a while and make sure you're not missing any kids. All right. End dates and reasons for exit. So you can right now start to end some of your students if you know your last day of school. Hopefully we all know that. Okay, I know my kids took their 5 days for a snowstorm. We know our last day of school, nothing's changing our calendar. So hopefully you're in the same boat. But if you know your last pupil attendance day, or you know your graduation dates, then you can go ahead and start to end some of your kids or do end ads on them. So if you are a high school district, you're going to know your graduates. Our graduation in my town's Friday. I know that they're going to graduate that day. Okay. So we see a lot of questions mostly in the ISB Q&A, the office hours they do once a month. A lot of people will ask SIS, what should be the last day for these kids? The definition of the begin and end dates for SIS is when they are expected to attend. So they are not expected to attend after graduation, right? So graduation date should be the end date in SIS, and you should match that. So this is going to be for your high school graduates. All right. So they're graduating with a diploma. All right. If you have kids that are going to go through the process and they fulfilled their IEP, but they're not going to get their diploma, maybe they're going to come back, then you can use a 02. If they've completed requirements for the general ed diploma, but they're going to come back, you can do 13. Okay. So for these kids, sometimes you want to do an end add. And then reached max age, of course, if you have kids that are going to age out this year, so they have, they've gone through the certification, they've completed things, but they have come back anyway. So they're going to max out, then you can end them with that. And then moved 08 from elementary to high school district. So if you are a separate district, so yes, I knew I'd get some of these. If you're a K-8 or pre-K through 8 district, you can go ahead and move your elementary kids out to the high school district. So you would use 08. So if you're a pre-K through 8 district, okay, if you're a pre-K through 8 district, all right, then you will go ahead and end them. All right. If you have kids that are going to come back, but they have gotten their certificate, okay, if they're going to come back, you can do an end add. So you will do an end add and let them roll over. So the thing is if you use the 01 and you use the 01 in SIS, we can't put them back in. If you use a 02 or a 13, we can put them back in. Okay, so if graduation is Sunday, you can use Sunday. The system's smart enough to recognize that. All right. I think I answered about the K-8 or the pre-K through 8 district. If you're a pre-K through 8 district, the high school's responsible for summer school. You do have to do this student by student. The first day of ESY is what you'll use for summer school students. So that's the date they're expected to attend, should be their begin date. Okay. You end 8th graders on the graduation date. Again, it's the last day that you expect them to attend. That's what SIS should be using. You do not end every student. You only end students that you do not want to return into your system next year. Okay, so if you want them to return, you're going to do an end add. So you don't necessarily have to end students that are going to come back, but it is good record keeping. Okay, so if they're just going to roll over and you're fine with that, then that's okay. All right. I just want you to know the difference between the 01 versus a 02 and a 13. This means they're getting their diploma and they're not going to come back. Okay. If you want to run a report on kids that you have exited, I would go under analytics and make sure, sort that by 8th grade, and then look in the end date column and make sure if you sort it that they all have an end date. If you're a K-8 district or pre-K through 8 district. Now, if you have a high school also, that will not apply to you. You do not do, so if you are if you're a pre-K through 12 district, you will not end these students. You will do an end add on them if you're going to send them up to high school. So everybody has to do that. everybody has to do something with their 8th graders, obviously. Whether you end them completely or end add and put them up at the high school is going to depend on this makeup of your district. So if you're a CUSD, pre-K through 12, then you're going to do an end add. Okay. All right. So remember, we do not want to end all of our records unless we absolutely have to. You can look for the public calendar. It'll give you the end date. So you can go on our website. We host that under resources, ISB links, and ISB public school calendar inquiry. So if you don't know the end date for sure, you can go look at what is on file. But what you're going to want to look at when you pull up that calendar is at the very top. Make sure, if you're not sure if it's correct, look to see if it's marked final yet. They won't mark it final until the last day of school at the earliest, but that's where you would want to look. If you already know your end date, then don't worry about it. But that is going to be the official end date that will be on file, is going to be under that. Okay, so that's how you get to that page, and that's how you would check, is look at the very top, make sure it says final, not final amended. All right, so what is an end add? An end add is when you're going to end your current record and make a copy of it and add a new one. So that copy then can then be edited. So it's kind of like doing a save as on a Word document. We're going to keep what we have and we're going to start something new. So we've got our history that's going to show what happened before, and then we're going to start a new record. You can do those throughout the year. So you have two options at this point. You're either going to be doing end adds for kids that have service changes in the new year. So we've talked about ending kids because maybe they're going to go to the high school next year. So you have two options of what you can be doing. Ending kids permanently, obviously, at the end of the year, but then your end add. So you could have kids that are going to, that have maybe like had meetings this spring, and they have immediate changes. So those changes are going to take place immediately. If that's the case, then you would do an end add, and you would give an end date in the school year. So it would be, say, for instance, the day the meeting was held, and then the begin date on the new record will be one day after the end date you supplied. So we would be saying on April 24th is when these new services are going to start. The new IEP is starting on April 24th, right? So that's kind of end adds throughout the school year. Well, it seems like there are always a lot of meetings in the spring. So people are going to have to decide, are we going to implement these changes tomorrow, or are we going to wait and implement these changes in the new school year? So this is if you were going to do that the next day, for example, in the current year. This is an example of what would happen if you said, okay, we've had this meeting. These are the changes that we've made, but we're not going to implement these changes until the new school year. Under those circumstances, you would end on the last day of school, a reason for 20, of course, and your begin date you're going to edit. By default, it's going to put in May 23rd, always a day after the end date. You're going to edit the begin date and put it the first day of school in the next school year, in the 26-27 school year. So the system will know during the rollover, okay, there's an ended record. We don't want that one, but we do want this record. So it's going to carry the new record into the new school year and leave the old record in the past. So you have two options of how you can prepare. Again, if you don't have time for this at the end of the year, these are things that can happen in the new year. So what will happen in the new year is, if you miss some kids, and you'll never know all the kids that aren't not going to come back. You delete them in the new year, and you would provide your exit data in the new year. So we collect that data until October 15th. So it's not the end of the world if you don't have time to do all of this at the end of the year. But these are the options if you do, or if you have time in the summer to do this, because the rollover won't happen until August. So you do have time to prepare, even if you're not able to work on it in May. All right. So two types of end adds you may or may not be doing. You also can run into age-related errors over the summer that can cause problems for you. They can Errors can pop up when you don't realize it. So one thing I recommend is that you're running your error report. Okay, make sure you're looking at that, and I'm going to show you how to do that. The reports that we send you guys, that's always going to be in relationship to something that we're expecting. So we've been sending you error reports most recently on orphanage students. That is not all of your errors. And so every year we find out that there are a lot of people who never run the error report. They rely on us to send the errors to them, thinking that that's everything. Okay, so you're going to have errors that we're not going to send out to you. So that's why you need to make sure that you're running the report. You're going to have kids that may turn 10 with a disability of N. If someone turns 10 tomorrow, they have a disability of N, you're going to come in tomorrow and have an error. We're not going to tell you that every day. So, there is a little bit of responsibility in running some of these reports on your own. So make sure that you're running the complete error report with the fatal errors once in a while to make sure you know where you're at. Also, you can have students that turn 14 and a half, so they may need their transition plan. A birthday can change that. Okay, so remember, run your error reports and make sure that you're looking at these. This is going to be also a reminder report. You can run this one, look at it, type in the age that you want. So you can put in 14.5, and it's going to show you all the kids in the school year that are going to turn 14 and a half. That way you have a heads up on who you may need to do indicator 13 transition plan entries for even before they turn 14 and a half. Okay, so it's a reminder report for you for all year. All right, your warnings versus your errors. Warnings are approved records, and we're not going to stop you from, or ISBE's going to go ahead and pick up those records with the warnings. The errors are disapproved. If they're disapproved, then they're not going to be picked up, right? They're not going to be reported. ISBE's not going to look at those records. So what I recommend is when you run your error reports that you filter that type on fatal, work on those first. Then look at your warnings and see if there's anything you need to fix. Warnings, it doesn't always mean that it's something you can change or fix. It just means it's something that, maybe raises a red flag or is something that's not common, and we want to make sure that that's what you meant to do. The warning you really need to focus on over the summer is going to be on indicator 13. If you have indicator 13 warnings, we're telling you that although you've filled out the form, that the plan is not in compliance. You need to make sure that you're looking at those, because although we're not going to cause an error or we're not going to give you an error in iStar for that, you're going to see that crop up again on your LEA determinations. So you want to make sure that those kids are in compliance. And to get the record error-free is not going to cut it. Okay, so they're going to be doing monitoring, and so you want to make sure that you're not putting something in iStar that doesn't match what's on the actual plan. All right, what is a good frequency to run the error report? I would run it once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. Just make sure that you're paying attention to that. So I'll tell you what happened to someone one time. And it was, very frustrating, but it was obvious that they weren't not running the error report ever. And so they had accidentally changed a begin date on a student, and it was a reimbursable code. So they had accidentally put it in the future, right? So the error would have been that the date was in the future and that it's bypassed the edit checks. But they never ran an error report. So they never realized that that student was actually not reported in the current year, only in the future. And when it came claim time, they lost the claim. Okay. So, and it was just a mistake. Just a tiny little data entry mistake. Used the wrong year. It was a valid year. So we didn't tell them they couldn't do that. A lot of people track things in the future. I have a warning for a student who turned 14 in December and they transferred in January. They still had, if they're 14 and it's a warning, we're just letting you know that it would be coming up. Okay, so that's a different kind of warning. If they're 14.5 with a warning, then that's the one that's the problem. So we give you a warning 6 months previous to remind you to work on the transition plan. I rarely have students that qualify for indicator 13 based on info I received from the staffing coordinator. Well, that's all you can do. All you can do is what you're put in what you're given. Okay. So back to the turning, it would be this. It's under student and reminders. That's how you run the reminder report. So alpha students turning X this school year, you type in the age. So it would be 14.5 for indicator 13. Yeah. You can run it at 14 if you want to, so you'll have a heads up, but 14.5 is when it will turn to an error or a warning, depending on whether it's filled out or not. So if you don't fill it out at all, we give you an error. If you fill it out but it doesn't meet, we give you a warning. If you fill it in and it does meet, you get nothing. So best case is that they actually receive it. So the disability of N, you're going to type in 10 on that report and look for the disability of N on the report, or you can export it and filter by disability of N to see those. Okay, so it's the same report, you just type in 10 instead of 14.5. Okay, this is how you run your error report. We're going to go to reports, student, change your category to errors, and you'll want that student error report. It's going to ask you what type you want student approvals. Again, I would change that to fatal, so that error type to fatal. First time you run it, see if you have any fatal errors. Then after that, you can take that off, see if you have any warnings. Do you need to do anything with the warnings? What kind of warnings are they? Those kinds of things. Again, if you have lost my train of thought reading a question. Oh, if you have warnings on indicator 13, we will again start sending emails very soon on those that need to be fixed. So we are going to try to help you out as well. ISB asks us to do that every spring. So have a question on DCFS. Let's see. Okay, so as far as the DCFS file goes, it's always going to be about 3 weeks behind. Okay. So we're not going to get it. The earliest we would get it maybe would be the 18th. Sometimes we don't get it till the 22nd or the 23rd of the month. So it's always going to be about 3 weeks behind. That's going to be that way, at least for the rest of this school year. I know they're working on making it better for next year. So this is just a glance at our website. One thing has changed. Instead of having events, we have changed this to trainings, but we're getting ready to have a big revamp of our website. So be ready for that. Hopefully it'll be user friendly and you guys are going to like it. We're putting a lot of time into researching and seeing what would be good for our items. Right now, what I would be watching most is going to be under hot topics. That's where we're going to put everything that's relevant. But your manuals and guides are also on the homepage, and that's something else that I want to point out to you guys. Sometimes I think that people don't know we have instructions for iStar, not just the user guide, not just the trainings with me, but there are actually ISB instructions that tell the rules, and that's how iStar was written. So there's an approval manual that's just for all the approvals for personnel and student, and there also is a claims instruction manual. So that is where we get our teachings from. Okay, so sometimes I will pull that up and someone has never seen it before. So remember, we have these manuals here. Do you have to print them out? Not necessarily. Save a treat, but don't forget about them. Okay, so sometimes, there are things there that could be helpful to you. And sometimes reading through a little bit of the approval instructions might actually help with some of the understanding of the system too. So I'm not saying you have to read it cover to cover, but some of the language in there are good things to kind of review and scan. So, all right. So I will take any questions that you guys have. Remember that we have more trainings this summer. So if you need to get in on those, go ahead and sign up. Have a question about summer school. For each of them, they need to have a SIS enrollment record for summer school dates. Do each of them Fund Aid kids need to have a summer approval record and iStar 2 by selecting both as a term in their approval record? Yes. So if they attend summer, most codes need to have a term of both in a summer SIS enrollment. Orphanage and Fund S students have to have, of course, a SIS enrollment, but they will have separate summer records. So they'll have a regular term record and a summer term record if they've gone to both. Both is not an option for funds D, E, F, or S as in Sam. Okay, so the link to register for interpreter data is going to be on our website under trainings. Let me so it's under training right here. All right. Okay, so students that you have ended will not roll over to the new year. So if you want them to roll over, they need to be open. They don't have an end date. They need to be open-ended, okay? If you have a regular term record and a summer term record, the summer term record needs to be open-ended. If you just have a regular term record, open-ended, no end date. We are the opposite of SIS. They end all their students every year. We do not. We only end students that we don't want to be in the new year. Worst case, if you accidentally end someone and they show up the next year, we'll just put them back in. It's not the end of the world. What is the end of the world is if they are marked as graduated in SIS with a diploma. You can make your changes in the new school year. Absolutely. You do not have to do end ads in the current year. Yep, you can update the records after the rollover. Absolutely. So things I showed today are mostly things that could be done in the new year. Yeah, you'll still be able to work on anything in this school year. So if something changes, if you go ahead and do an end ad on a student and something changes between now and the end of school, you can still go edit all of that. Nothing will lock until July 31st. So again, some of this is just something you can be doing to work ahead if you want to, if you have the time. Again, if you can't do end ads now and put things in the future, it's fine. If nothing's changing, there's no need to do an end ad. So keep that in mind. There's nothing you need to do if the child is just going to continue doing next year what they did this year. You don't need to do anything. Null should be checked under reports. Yes, keep it at that. If you don't, then you're going to have to put a date in that. You will get errors if you do end ads. They will all be the same error, so you can filter those out in the export if you want to. Yep, you can do 2 end ads if you want to. So she says they're going to, they did an annual review and something changed for the rest of the school year, and then it's going to be something different when school starts. Yes, you can. So you can have 2. You can have one till the end of the year. You can have as many records as you want as long as they don't overlap. So remember, you've got to put an end date, and then the begin date has to be the next day or the first day of school. Okay. So the rollover would be smart enough to know to leave all the records in this year, and to take only the new record for the new year. Somebody asked about doing mass end dates. if you do end ads, the mass end dates is a nightmare. It will ruin your data. So that's why if you see that, if you've seen that in mass change before, I'm aware that it's there, but it will ruin your data because it'll put an end date on every record. So we don't want that. Okay. I can end date for all 8th graders in iStar with the last day of school. Our high school will have a new record. Your high school will know to add them. You want to let them know. There's usually some way of letting them know. They'll know that they need to pick up your kids next year. If you are pre-K through 8th grade, you end them. They're not coming back to you. Should we do an end ad when a related service is removed, added, or changed? I always recommend end ads for any change. There are no rules to that, though. You do not have to do that. Do we enter indicator 13 for a parochial school student? Does he have an IEP or an ISP, Sue? What fund? If it's Fund L, you don't do that for them. It doesn't apply to Fund L, P, N, or U. They have to have an IEP. And yes, you can do end ads to change buildings for next school year. Yep. That was a great example of end ads. So even if they didn't have a meeting, but they're going to go to the high school next year, you can go ahead and do end ads for them. So that would be the first day of school next year, and you would change their resident school to the high school, and they're serving information to the high school. Good questions, guys. Okay, I don't see anything else coming in. Remember, if you have questions for us, email us, call us, be in touch. If you want to come this afternoon, you can register for that. Again, it's just going to be casual. So, okay, one last question. If a student is going from 5th to 6th grade in another building, is this an end ad? Yes. Okay, if you have a student unreported that did not have an IEP or an ISP, then they don't need to be in iStar at all. Okay. All right, for real this time. I will let you guys get. Remember, if you have questions, let us know. Hopefully, I'll see some of you this afternoon. Thank you, guys. Have a good day. Bye-bye.